This is NextGen TV with Mark Swarbrick, the Project Director of DCIS. Mark, nice to talk to you at the National Conference. Let's start off by just telling us a bit about DCIS.
Okay, well, DCIS stands for Digital Communications Infrastructure Strategy, and it was something the government committed to doing in a report that it published last year. So, in a nutshell, the DCIS is looking forward sort of 10 to 15 years and asking the question, what communications infrastructure will the UK need to meet the needs of the users, be they consumers and business, and to position the UK as a leading digital nation in the global commercial environment.
Now, you've had some consultation, I think you were saying here today. The responses you got were interesting, but they were more short-term. So where do you go next?
Well, I think, they were short-term. A lot of them were focusing on issues that are here and now, and I think that's perfectly valid because clearly, some of those would be building blocks for the next layer of communications infrastructure that we need. So clearly, there are still some what we would call current issues that need to address, that we need to make progress on. I think we still need to explore probably with industry and with users what are the sort of longer term challenges in terms of meeting these. And as I said earlier, I think what we see is a world in which there needs to be ubiquitous, seamless, reliable connectivity. Because fundamentally, users will want to do what they want to do, where they want to do it, and when they want to do it. And that's going to pose a series of challenges to communication providers, to government, probably to the regulator, and indeed to users themselves, because the way in which they use their technology and the way in which they use their devices will have an impact on the infrastructure, and they may need to change their behaviour or in order to improve their performance. So I think the point is, as we move forward, everybody has a stake in this, and everybody has a part to play in ensuring that we can deliver the infrastructure the UK needs.
Yes, I mean it's moving, and it's been more challenging than ever before in history, isn't it? I mean, it's just so difficult to predict the way it's going to go in the future.
Yes, I mean we tried in the consultation to set out some sort of scenarios, and we didn't claim that they were sort of we were being some sort of Delphic quality, but I think you can see some sort of trends that are likely to continue for at least for a period. So obviously a frequent one is the amount of data consumption, and the fact that the majority of that data consumption would be audio visual. So then there's a debate about, well, are people seriously going to watch television on their phone on the move? Maybe not, but they are of course increasingly taking sort of snack size video clips. And I mentioned the other day that if you go on the BBC site nowadays, increasingly there are these 2-minute clips of goals or interviews or whatever. That's the sort of thing people will consume, and that's still going to make that's still a challenge. If you're on a bus in Shrewsbury and you want to look at that, that's a challenge to a communication provider as to how they're going to give you that level of service. So data consumption will continue to rise. It will have a natural limit. There's only 24 hours in a day, and you as an individual can only consume so much, or are only willing to pay for so much. So I don't see this necessarily as maybe on an aggregate level it will continue to rise rapidly, as more people come online on networks. But equally, for an individual, there's going to be a cut-off point. I think, as I say, that the expectation though will be that if I get my nice, friendly, expensive device out, I want to be able to use it. And the circle spinning round, or the sort of interminable wait for something to happen, the tolerance levels for that I think are already low and will get lower.
Yeah, because again, you were talking a little bit about how the mobile world fits into this, because it's very much on the move, but the mobile operators previously have done a best effort. Maybe they're going to have to try and improve that a little bit.
Well, I think their best efforts will have to get better. I mean, look, there are, but in terms of wireless and mobile networks, there are clearly physical limits and limitations in terms of providing service. So, there are problem radio waves don't always penetrate walls as well as they might. Increasingly, buildings are being clad in things that are actually radio resistant, and we have that problem on trains. I mean, a lot of new trains are almost Faraday cages and actually block out mobile signals. So not all the problems are at the feet of the mobile operators, and that's why I say there's a role for everybody, because really we need to talk to the building industry, we need to talk to transport sectors about how what they're doing impacts on provision of services. But all that aside, then yes, clearly mobile operators and wireless operators in general face that challenge of how are they going to get their signals to to people in more remote areas. And as I said in the talk earlier, the reality is that whereas now we tend to talk about things in terms of population coverage, I think going forward it'll be far more about geographic coverage and the level of coverage across major roads or minor roads and across the rail network and all those things are going to have to improve quite rapidly in the next decade.
Yeah, because we're seeing, aren't we, there's a lot of out there in the environment that people are wanting to work from home more, and they all want to live in these lovely, beautiful rural areas, but then you've got connectivity issues there.
Yes, you have. And we need to look, some of those will be dealt with by technology, I'm sure. Satellite tends to be the sort of regarded as sort of fringe, but the capability of satellite provision is improving all the time, and that maybe people need to look at that more seriously. But yeah, I mean, we're conscious of that. A lot of the sort of thinking we're doing, and I know Ofcom are doing, is how you're going to improve the sort of function of the markets to deliver wider services. But as I say, I am a great believer that technology will provide as many of the solutions and the technical improvements. So, I know here we've got people doing micro trenching and narrow trenching. So there's always people are always thinking about and innovating as to how they can deliver these services. And I think the role for us in the public sector, more not just central government but local government as well, is how do we facilitate that and how can we make that easier for those innovations and those investments to take place. And then ultimately, of course, there is the question: at what point will the market stop? And then what do you do about the gap? And that's where public policy comes into play.
Certainly going to be a fascinating debate for months, years to come, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again. But in the meantime, thanks very much for speaking to us.
You're more than welcome, Brian. Thank you.